So you click this video hoping for a magic guide that doesn't just read off her abilities. Well, this video is going to give you exactly that, and I will also explain her game plan and some decision making you're going to have to make while you are playing this character. Because I'm not gonna lie, this character can do a lot of things, and balancing all of it is going to be very difficult, and it's going to take a lot of practice. This video was made after the Season 1 buffs as well, and she got some pretty nice sauce with those buffs. If there's ever a change to how Magik plays at her core, you can be sure that I will do my best to make a guide for it. However, first thing is first, since this is a guide that I want to cover almost everything that I can with her, we have to start with the basics, but stick with me, we'll get into more of the advanced stuff later down the road. So let's just talk about her combos first, and also when to use them. So first off, you use your portal, you left click or use your primary fire, you dash, and then you use your primary fire again, and then you use your projectile, and then you use your primary fire once again. And also, while in between all of those things, when you do your primary fire, you can animation cancel those with a melee attack. So that is the first combo. In full speed, it'll look something like that. And then her second combo is to start off with a projectile, dash, and then you do the same combo. Projectile, into a dash, primary fire, into a melee. And those are my two favorite full combos to do with this character. And then I'll talk about when you should be using these in just a second. But first off, I just want to explain that even though these are full combos, you don't actually always want to be doing this all the time. Her bread and butter is actually just to dash someone, hit them with your primary fire, the soul sword, and then animation cancel that into a left click. Once you kind of know this bread and butter, then you can just start weaving other parts of her kit into it, you know, like a starter, like this. I consider that a starter. And then you can also just tack on an ender being the projectile into primary fire melee. So that's kind of how you want to think about this character, right? She's got starters, she's got her bread and butter, and then she's got her ender, and then you just kind of have to combine all of those things for the situation at hand. Another starter is also just her projectile, fully charged up. Again, those are all just examples. So now, when should you be using these combos? So the first combo, where you do your left shift into your dash, this is a good combo to do when you're frontlining and brawling with your tanks, and then you happen to see a squishy character kind of off by their lonesome. You know, you just portal, you dash up to them, and then do your combo. So that's the combo that you want to do when you're frontlining with your tank. And then the combo that you do where you start with your projectile is a combo that you do when you're going for assassinations or when you go for flanks. Because starting off your damage with the projectile is a huge amount of damage, and then if you hit the dash, it's pretty much guaranteed kill. Now there is some tech with this, but I don't really recommend learning it. Like, it's not super important. Just know that it exists. So the tech is that you can cancel the projectile into the dash almost instantaneously, but you have to press the buttons really, really quickly, and the timing is very tight. So that's why I don't generally recommend learning this, just because the mechanical requirements for this is really difficult. I'm trying to do this multiple times here, but it's, again, quite difficult. But basically, if you do this right, you don't see the projectile, and it basically just becomes fused with your dash. One more thing to note with this left shift combo with the Eldritch Whirl is this is only going to kill 250 health enemies. Characters that have 275 health needs the extra projectile in order to kill. So, you know, when you're playing Magik and you haven't actually engaged yet, you might have thrown your projectile already. So when you go for this combo, you don't actually have the projectile to kill them. So you just need to be wary of who you are attacking and whether or not you can actually secure that kill. See, notice that she has just barely enough HP. So this goes the same thing with 300 health heroes. So just make sure that when you dive characters that have more than 250 HP, that you have your projectile available. Now, next up, I want to talk about how to get her passive going. Her passive gives her overhealth as you deal damage. So you can see that when I hit someone with my primary fire, I get about 23 overhealth. When I melee somebody, I get about 11 overhealth. So each attack in our kit gives her a different amount of overhealth. And we're not really going to go into all of the overhealth amounts, just know that each one kind of gives a certain amount. And here's the thing with Eldritch World. The more enemies that you hit, the more overhealth that you gain. So technically, if you can hit an entire team with this, you're gaining a whole bunch of overhealth. However, that might seem good in theory, but in practice, if you're doing this, you're most likely going to die because you are now in the middle of the entire team, and they're most likely going to turn around and focus you, and you are 100% dead, even though you have all of that overhealth. So what is the best way to get her overhealth? Well, in my opinion, it really depends on what you're doing. If you're frontlining with tanks, dropping down your demon can give you a lot of overhealth really quickly. You can see here now, I already have about an extra 100 overhealth, and that's a lot. If their enemy team is not taking out your demons give you so much overhealth. Just dropping this in the middle or in front of a tank is very, very powerful, especially when you're just not trying to commit to a fight yet. And grabbing this overhealth is really important because it gives you a better advantage in those 1v1s that Magik has to take in order to help her team win those team fights. Taking out a key DPS player or killing one healer can open up the team fight to pretty much allow your team to win that fight. So having a good understanding of when to dive, when you have your overhealth, and when you can take those 1v1s is super, super duper essential with Magik. Alright, now let's go ahead and talk about Magik's game plan, because as a melee DPS, you really need to be doing a lot in order to kind of help your team. So she has several game plans, and it really just depends on what the game state is in the current match. So she can be an assassin or a backline disruption. This will relieve DPS pressure from your team, especially if you're taking that 1v1. So, you know, let's say there's like a pesky Moon Knight that's just generating a whole bunch of ult charge on your tanks. You can go ahead and take up that 1v1 and relieve that pressure off your tanks and allows them to move forward. Being an assassinator and a backline disruption is pretty much the same thing as being a flanker. So she's very powerful at that because of that combo that I mentioned before. She's able to sometimes take out any key squishy character with ease as long as you hit your projectile and your dash attack. So how do you actually do these things? So if you're going to go with some flanks or doing some backline disruption, you cannot be the engager as Magik. You should not be the first one to be diving into the enemy team. You must let your tanks or your other DPS partner to do that first, or at least lay down some pressure first, and then you need to be opportunistic about when you dive, when you go for a flanking or a assassin playstyle. You also want to make sure that all of your cooldowns are ready just in case your dive fails so that you can get out safely. That should go unsaid, but sometimes it does need to be said. And this likewise goes if you're just trying to play the front line. If you're just trying to chip away at the enemy team, make sure that you have your portals available and that you actually have your dash available. Using your dash to get out of a sticky situation when you're not actually committed to the fight is super essential. All in all, it boils down to just having really good cooldown management, and having good cooldown management usually just means that you have at least one portal available and being able to use the terrain to get the cooldowns back on your abilities. Her other role is to be a frontliner with the tanks. Sometimes you just need to put pressure on the front line first, and your team's not exactly committing to the fight yet, so just playing with your tanks and taking space slowly is kind of what you need to do as Magik. Because here's the thing, if you go in with Magik and if your team is not following up, you're going to get absolutely no value. So sometimes Magik just needs to frontline with her tank, with her demons, you know, maybe charge some ult, put some pressure on the front line, and push the enemy back slowly and slowly. This also helps you get those overshields so that you can take the 1v1s when your team actually wants to commit. And then one key role that Magik has to fulfill is that she has to dislodge any pesky DPS characters that are in positions where the whole team can't get to. So like that Moon Knight example that I gave you guys, if there's a Moon Knight that's just sitting up top on high ground, you gotta make sure you dislodge him from that spot. Use your dash to get up there, take that 1v1, and make sure he cannot put that pressure on the team. Because who else can do that if not you? Your tanks can't really do that. They gotta stay in the front line. Your healers can't do that, so that job falls onto you. So as you can see, Magik is capable of doing a lot of things. And so now I really want to talk about some decision-making tips you want to be making as Magik. But again, decision-making is not a skill that I can just tell you guys to do something and then you just do it. It's something that you build as a part of game sense as you play the game more and kind of understand the game state and what's going on in your particular matches. So with most DPS characters or dive characters, timing is absolutely everything. If you dive the enemy team and your team is nowhere near you, nowhere near to follow you up, your dive is a failed dive. Even if you get a kill, it's probably most likely not enough to get your team to move forward. So you really need to time your dives very properly. And one good way to do that is just to keep an eye on what your tanks are doing and what your other DPS characters are doing, especially if you have a fellow dive DPS playing with you. But keeping an eye on your tanks and seeing if they're pushing forward or if they're just kind of hanging back and taking damage or if they're super pressured. Now this doesn't mean that you should always be playing passive if your tanks are always playing passive, and you should always be playing aggressive when your tanks are playing aggressive, because sometimes a play needs to happen for your team to move forward. So again, right, it's not something that I can say with 100% certainty, like, if your tanks are playing black, always play black. If your tanks are playing forward, always play forward. Sometimes you just have to make a hero play to get something going. But in general, you do want to react to what your tanks are doing and what their tanks are doing. Now, you must be aware to not tunnel vision on your current target. If you're spending more than 5 seconds trying to kill a target, you need to reevaluate the situation and make the decision whether to continue putting focus on killing that character or to regroup with your team to fight with them instead. And it's not something that necessarily has a right or wrong answer, but it is just something to think about when you play this character, is to obviously not tunnel vision on a character that you dive. Now, during huge brawly team fights, you must constantly be scanning for squishy targets that are out of position, and then immediately switch your target to them once you have your abilities available. So I kind of mentioned this already, but say you're frontlining with your tanks, you're throwing down your demon, you're just using your primary fire, and then you see a healer or a DPS character kind of stray away from their team. Immediately switch target off the tank and then go for that squishy target. This is very especially true during overtime situations. The enemy will begin to trickle, so being good at understanding who is going to be coming back and focusing them as soon as they spawn is a skill that you have to master as Magik. Not even as Magik, but as a DPS player or as a DPS role in general. Because as they start to trickle, and if you kind of lose your focus on those squishy heroes, and then you just start putting all your focus onto the tank, and that tank doesn't die, or they happen to have an ult that kind of is able to stall, and then all those squishy heroes are able to come back, then that's how the team is able to come back from those overtime situations. So you always need to make sure you are scanning for those squishy heroes during huge brawly team fights and then switch targets immediately. Now, I want to highlight a couple of matchup things with Magik in my experience. I really wanted to highlight the fact that there are some heroes in the game that Magik doesn't really play super well into, and for me personally, that is Winter Soldier. It seems like every time I try to 1v1 a Winter Soldier, I usually end up losing. So if you're going to dive a Winter Soldier, you really need to make sure that you have your overshields and you have all of your abilities available. Because of the fact that Winter Soldier has more than 250 HP, and he gains overshield just by using his abilities. So he pretty much has like 300 plus HP. So your combo usually isn't enough to kill him because he's just going to gain overhealth during the fight. So yeah, I find that Winter Soldier is one of the harder matchups to win in a 1v1 with Magik. So fair warning when you go up against Winter Soldiers. Alright, now let's go ahead and talk about her ultimate, the Dark Child ultimate. Dark Child is pretty good. You should be able to guarantee at least 1 kill with this every single time. 2 is really, really good, and 3 means you pretty much just popped off with this ult, and that team fight should be yours. So when you are in your ultimate, you obviously want to target whoever is going to swing the fight most. And in general, that's going to be a healer that has an ultimate ready, or a DPS that has an ultimate ready. So typically, when you pop your ult, you want to target a key healer or a key DPS player. And with the buffs to her in Season 1, she is able to kill through support ults. She has a combo that is a little bit difficult to do. You charge her a projectile, you don't even need to charge it halfway. Even charging it like halfway or even a third of the way is enough to kill most squishy heroes. So if the enemy team has used a support ult, you can get a kill on a squishy by simply doing I'll say a third charge or even a quarter charge on her projectile, and then into a dash immediately is enough to kill a squishy hero. Now it is quite hard to pull off because it is quite an animation commitment, and when you ult, you become the sole focus of the enemy team. So it is really hard to, charge up for this and go for a dash before you die. So I will say that that is kind of hard to do. You kind of have to do it from cover. You kind of have to if you're going to pop her ult during a support ult, you kind of have to pop it from cover and then charge it up and then engage. If you're popping your ult in the middle of a team fight out in the open and they've already support ulted, you're most likely not going to get that combo off to get a kill. Doing an Eldritch Whirl into an immediate dash is enough to kill all the squishies in the game, and you don't even need to wait for your Eldritch Whirl to actually complete. You can cancel your Eldritch Whirl immediately into a dash if you want to, and the Eldritch Whirl ticks are still going to occur. And then after you get that first kill, you don't have your dash available, so it's kind of hard to get the second kill on a squishy. So the combo that I do is Eldritch Whirl into a left click into a projectile attack. So that usually gets the kill on the second character, and then with the time remaining that you have, you'll just have to go for Eldritch Whirls and left clicks, a combination of them, hopefully get a third kill, and then most likely you won't get a fourth kill, but if you do, it's with your dash, because if you use your dash at the very start of her ult, you should get it back before it ends. One thing also to note with her ult is that it completely resets all of her abilities. So what you can do is you can pop most of your abilities before you pop her ult. They all come back, and that way you're kind of maximizing as much DPS as possible. Or you can dash into the air and pop your ult. Lots of different possibilities, but just know that when you pop it, all of your abilities come back. And then also when you exit the ult, all of your abilities come back, so that means you're free to try to go for another combo on a squishy with your dash. That projectile combo into the dash is actually enough to kill a Cloak and Dagger through her ultimate, and even Mantis through her ultimate, if your team is also kind of shooting them as well, just to take off some of their overhealth and just put some pressure to keep them just from instantly healing all the damage. Because there is a slight gap if you don't do the tech where you dash and throw your projectile at the same time. The weird thing is that for Luna Snow's ultimate, your dash goes straight through her, presumably because she is CC immune. However, I believe that Cloak and Dagger are also CC immune, so not 100% sure what's happening there. Maybe there's just like a gap where Cloak and Dagger is not CC immune, but if you try to dash a Luna while she's in her ult, you're gonna go straight through her. So unfortunately we cannot kill Luna while she's ulting with a projectile into a dash combo, but you can kill her teammates, her squishy teammates, while she is ulting. So that's still possible. Punisher is also CC immune during his ult, but you're still able to dash him for damage, so don't really know what's happening there. So let's just go ahead and move on to the next section. And these are just general tips I have for playing her. They come to mechanics and a little bit of gameplay tips, especially if you're in the lower ranks. So when you first pick up Magik and you're playing her, you're gonna miss her dash like a ton. And there's a good reason for this. There's multiple reasons for why you're probably missing this, and that reason is most likely because you don't understand that this game is third person, so the camera is kind of over their shoulder, So if you kind of aim at the enemy's right shoulder, you're gonna go straight through them. But if you aim over their left shoulder, you're more likely to hit them. So you have a whole area right here to the left of their shoulder to go for a dash on them. So keep this in mind when you try to go for a dash. But that's not the only reason why you're probably missing her dash. Her dash is not, you know, instant, right? It's not a hit scan. There's definitely like some travel time associated with it. So one of the reasons why you're probably missing the dash is because you're really far away. And so when you're really far away, it's kind of hard to hit. Because the enemies are most likely strafing, and as they're strafing, it can be kind of hard to hit, because if they move the other way, but you dashed one way, you're just gonna go right past them. So just making sure that you close the gap a little bit and not trying to get them with the full length of your dash will help you land more dashes. So combine distance along with that left shoulder trick that I told you about to try to land more dashes onto the enemy. When you're playing Magik in low elo as well, you cannot rely on your teams for healing. So basically, when you're diving in, you must go in with the mentality that you are most likely not going to get any healing, and you are basically committing your life to getting 1, maybe 2 kills. With proper cooldowns, you're able to get out using your left shift or your dash if it comes back on cooldown and they don't manage to kill you. But, you know, you should go in with the mentality that you probably will not come out. So you want to make sure you get as much value as possible with your dives. So in order to do this, you want to play around the terrain and the environment as much as possible. So, you know, say you're playing around a piece of cover like this, drop your demon down, see an enemy there, you go for a dive, but then you miss. So now you try to get back out. So you pop another portal to slip behind cover, and then hopefully your team has noticed that you are out of the fight and no longer committed, and you get some heals, and then that way you can go ahead and dive back in and try again. So that means that learning to play around terrain is very, very important for Magik. Playing around cover is super, super duper important so that you can stay alive and not take damage, because when you're out in the open, you're most likely going to die a lot quicker than if you're playing around the terrain. And just like a lot of dive characters like Spider-Man and Psylocke, playing around health packs and knowing where those health packs spawn are going to be very, very, very important in the low ranks. Alright guys, so that was my guide on Magik. If you made it this far, drop a like, leave a comment down below, let me know if this guide helped you out. Is there another character that you guys want me to spend some time on and learn and make another guide on? Also drop that down as a comment down below. And until next time, I will see you guys later.